Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. My name is Wild Trees. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Today, I will be finishing the presentation I started last time, which was about UFOs and alien abductions. It went kind of over, so I didn't get to talk about the abductions. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's analyze UFO or alien abductions. Well, the truth is that for as long as humans have been telling stories and writing down things, it seems they've been abducted. They they have been they have been taken from their bedrooms when they're sleeping, or sometimes not from their bedrooms. And even if we're not talking about paranormal abductions, I mean, abductions happen all the time. So humans abduct animals, humans abduct other humans. Some animals do abduct humans, actually. I've heard that, I think in India, at least one time, a wild monkey abducted a baby from its crib. Anyway, so abductions are very common. The question is, are we being abducted by non-humans and non-primates? I guess the first thing I'll start off is I'll talk about my personal abduction story, which I'll say right now, I think it was probably a dream, but who knows? Maybe it wasn't a dream. So I was about 19 years old, and I had just started my first semester at community college. And at the time, I still lived with my parents, and I had two younger sisters. And they were kids. So what I remember was that I was sleeping in bed. I mean, I was sleeping in the living room on the couch. And I woke up and I looked to my side and I saw that both of my sisters were kind of just like looking at me very creepily. And I thought that was very odd. And then I kind of focused my eyes because I was like half awake. And then I noticed that they weren't actually my sisters. They were actually like three classic gray aliens. Luckily, they were very cute looking. I will say they were adorable. They were short. They looked like children. They had big eyes, gray skin, not a lot of other features. They moved very delicately. And when they noticed that I was awake, they got scared and they ran away down the hallway. And then I went back to sleep. And then I woke up later and I didn't really think about it much because I was too busy with teenager stuff, I guess. So that sounds like a classic kind of abduction story. A lot of people report waking up with weird things standing over their bed. I wasn't scared. I didn't feel paralyzed. But yeah, I don't know if that was a dream. It probably was a dream. I don't know. But that's my experience with alien abductions. I don't remember anything else. The other thing is that I'm going to be analyzing a Harvard psychiatrist presentation and research on alien abductions. I will say right now that she is totally on the side that alien abductions do not happen. I will say that she makes a lot of good points in her presentation, and I will give her credit, but I don't 100% agree with her. And to be honest with you, I do think some alien abductions do happen. I don't think they're all just normal things. So right off the bat, that's my opinion. I do think some alien abductions are real. However, I will be analyzing a researcher who made a presentation and wrote a book and spent several years researching alien abductions and why she believes they're not real. And she gives her own explanation. That does not mean that I agree with her. But I do think it's important to look at the other side of what people are saying. It gives you a better understanding of the issue. And to be honest with you, apart from this researcher, I don't know of any other than Dr. Mack. I forget his first name. But other than another Harvard researcher, Dr. something Mack, I don't know of anybody else who's done the research on alien abductions. So I'll give her credit for at least starting the research. Okay. The other thing I guess I'll say is, before I get started on her presentation, another observation that I've made about alien abductions, which I've talked to about before on my other channel or my other show called Black Lotus Live, is that since I am a biologist, I have noticed some scenarios that humans do to animals that are very similar to what humans report being done to them by aliens, basically. So the story is that I was spending a summer in a research station in the Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratory in Western Colorado. Very high altitude, beautiful place. Some of my best memories were there. But the story was that I went to a party with all the other students, and I met somebody, and I was very inebriated. I drank a lot of apple juice, let's just say. And I told this person said, "Hey, I'm leaving at 5 in the morning. I'm going hiking up this mountain to do some research to a really beautiful place." And I said, "Hey, I'll go with you." This person didn't believe I would go with them because, like I said, I had so much apple juice. I was going to have like a headache from all the sugar and the apple juice I had at the party. But anyway, I think I slept like 1 hour. I did get up. I went to the mess hall. I got some breakfast. And man, lo and behold, I did go with this person and their scientist. And I went up this mountain. In order to go up this mountain, we had to wake up super early. We had to cross a river on foot. I mean, the water wasn't that high. It was like up to our knees. Climbing up, there was still all this snow. We finally got to this area. It turns out what they were doing, it was beautiful. It was worth it. It was worth waking up and not sleeping. I did pass out once I got there, though. But before I passed out, I got to see what was going on. So it turns out they were actually doing research on salamanders. And so we went up to this very isolated area at the very top of the mountain, and there were these big pools of water. And in these pools of water, which was like beautiful, pristine pools of water, there were salamanders. And so what the researchers would do is they get a long pole and they would dip it in the water and they would pull out these salamanders. And then they would take the salamanders to this little tent they had set up to do research. And they took the salamanders and they were very gentle with them, but they measured them. They weighed them. They cut off a little toe. They said that was to mark them. They said it didn't hurt them. And they put a little neosporin on the toe. And they put a little implant on them. And then they dropped them back in the pond. Now, to me, that sounds exactly like what a lot of people report is being done to them in an alien abduction. They report that they are in their home, which the salamander was in his pond. They report that they are taken to a craft, which we were doing. We were taking the salamanders with a net into a tent. They report they're being experimented on. They report that they're getting like scoop marks taken out, like the way we trimmed the salamander's toe. We measured them, and then we put them back. And, you know, we didn't do it because we didn't do it to be mean. We actually cared about the salamanders, and we were doing it to help them. So that's a weird parallel that I noticed between what scientists do to animals and what apparently happens in alien abductions. Okay, so now let's get to this presentation. So the presentation is, I think, based on research and also based on a book. So the book's name is Abducted: How People Come to Believe They Were Kidnapped by Aliens. And it's by a Harvard psychologist named Susan A. Clancy. And there's a link in the description to the presentation and to her book that she wrote. Okay, so first let me read on the book. This is kind of like the blurb, a summary of what the book is about to give you an idea. Then we'll get into the nitty gritty of her research. So I'm just copying, I'm reading directly from, I think, Amazon. This is what's on her book, written by her, not written by me. So this is her book. It says, "They are tiny, they are tall, they are gray, they are green. They survey our world with enormous glowing eyes to conduct their shocking experiments. They creep in at night to carry humans off to their spaceships. Yet there is no evidence that they exist at all. So how could anyone believe he or she was abducted by aliens, or want to believe it?" To answer these questions, psychologist Susan Clancy interviewed and evaluated abductees, old and young, male and female, religious and agnostic. She listened closely to their stories, how they struggled to explain something strange in their remembered experience, how abductions seemed plausible, and how, having suspected abduction, they began to recollect it. Aided by suggestion and hypnosis, Clancy argues that abductees are sane and intelligent people who have unwittingly created vivid false memories from a toxic mix of nightmares, culturally available text, and in parentheses, example is abduction reports began only after stories of extraterrestrial appearances in films and on TV, and a powerful drive for meaning that science is unable to satisfy. For them, otherworldly terror can become a transforming, even inspiring experience. Being abducted, writes Clancy, may be a baptism in the new religion of this millennium. This book is not only a subtle exploration of the workings of memory, but a sensitive inquiry into the nature of belief. Let me take a break and let's see. We have, Mr. Catfish is here. I'm so glad you could be here. Thank you, Mr. Catfish. Mr. Catfish has been following my presentations at Black Lotus, and I am a big fan of Mr. Catfish as well. Thank you for being here. Mr. Catfish, be sure to give me any comments you have. I will answer them. What I usually do is I'll read a little bit, take a break, look at the comments, go back to reading. So that was the mixture. Now, I will say already, I could analyze some of this description. Some of it's correct, some of it's not correct. What is correct based on his book description? Well, she says that a lot of people find it to be a transforming experience. That's true. I mean, a lot of people that I've talked to, not all of them, but a lot of them are changed after they've been abducted. And even though a lot of bad things happen, they overall see it as a positive. Some things I don't agree with. Here's a sentence. She said, abduction reports began only after stories of extraterrestrials appeared in films and on TV. That's not true. I mean, there's fairy abductions. There's different abduction stories that happened before there was any television. So like I said, abductions by weird creatures, they go back quite a way. So that statement I do not agree with. And there was another thing up here she said, or the book said, that I didn't quite agree on. Well, maybe there wasn't, but I got plenty of other things to say. Okay, so now let's go into the heart of her presentation. Okay, so on her presentation, she said she spent 6 years of her life at Harvard University interviewing people who were abducted by aliens. So, hey, you have to give her credit. She put in the time. She did 6 years of research. However, she does not believe anyone has been abducted. To this day, she doesn't believe that anybody's been abducted. I will also say, she talks about this in her presentation. The reason why she started interviewing abductees is because she was certain that there was no truth to alien abductions. To me, that's a bias. I mean, when you're starting a research project, you should have an open mind. But she's already coming in with a strong idea that there's definitely no alien abductions. Later on, she does try to give an excuse or cover for why. She does address this bias, but that's the first problem I have with her research, is that she comes into it absolutely not believing that alien abduction is real. I mean, to me, if I'm starting a project, of course I have my suspicions of what the results would be or what the data could show, but I would never come into an experiment absolutely sure of what would happen. And so she came in absolutely sure that alien abduction was not real. And afterwards, after 6 years of research, she still believes it's not real. Okay, so some background on why did this researcher pick this esoteric topic, Harvard researcher? Well, she says that in the 1990s, Harvard researchers believed that repressed memories existed. So in the 90s, it looks like in Harvard, there was a lot of talk about repressed memories. In other words, memories that were not remembered immediately, that were somewhere buried in our minds. And at this time, the Harvard researchers especially were studying these repressed memories that had to do with child abuse, probably one of the most horrific things that could ever happen. Now, there was another side at the Harvard camp in the 90s that said that tragic memories would be remembered, and that they argued that the memories that were being told about child abuse, they were actually being created in therapy sessions by the therapist. So the background of this alien abduction research is that in the 90s, there was 2 camps at Harvard University. One camp believed that repressed memories were real. The other camp believed that these were actually false memories that were being created during a therapy session, that they were not real memories. And these memories had to do with child abuse, a very hot topic, hot in that it's very tragic. Now, what she found, this researcher, was that questioning the reality of child abuse is a very taboo subject. Much like the paranormal is a taboo subject, she got a lot of hate mail, inflammatory hate mail, when she started doing research on childhood abuse. And she was arguing that childhood abuse, these memories, were false. She was receiving hate mail. People were boycotting or refusing to go to her talks. So she decided that she was going to step away from the false memory creation research because she was getting too much heat. So she said also, when dealing with these abuse victims, she said there was really no way to tell if the abuse actually happened or not. That was one of her main problems. She was like, I want to study false memories. I want to study people who have false memories of being abused as children. However, one of the main problems is that I can't prove or show that this abuse actually happened. There's no way to do it. So then she decided, okay, well, let me, instead of studying victims of a supposed child abuse, let me study a group which I know for sure, which she knows for sure the event didn't happen. Who was this group? Alien abductees. Once again, here's a problem. The reason why she started studying alien abduction is because she knew for certain that there was no such thing as alien abductions. So she knew this before she started the research. In other words, she knew that all the memories that people would tell her, all the memories people shared with her were false. She knew that for a fact. And later on, she says the reason why is because there's not enough physical evidence to support that alien abductions are real. Part of that is true. I do think there is the evidence showing that there is evidence out there, physical evidence that shows that alien abduction is real, but there's not enough evidence to show that alien abduction is real. But on the other hand, just because there's not enough evidence of something does not mean it doesn't exist. I mean, for example, we didn't have evidence of DNA for a long time. However, DNA still existed. We didn't have evidence of the atom. However, the atoms do exist. So I'm saying that just because evidence doesn't exist for something or not enough evidence exists, it doesn't mean that that thing is not true. It could just be, what I suspect is happening with alien abductions, it could just be that our tools are not advanced enough to find the evidence. It could be that our methods and tools are not yet advanced enough. So anyway, here's some problems. So already she's coming in with this bias, which is a prejudice in favor for or against one thing, person, or group compared with another. So she's showing prejudice in favor of the idea that there is no such thing as an alien abduction. And this is considered to be unfair, especially when you're starting any kind of scientific research. Okay, some other details about, this is now about her experience dealing with alien abduction research. She says she received a lot of hate mail, which I anticipate maybe I will upset some people. But like I said, I'm open on the subject of alien abduction. I would never tell someone that they were not abducted by aliens. I am just presenting someone else's research and trying to give some analysis of it. But yeah, she received hate mail. She said it was mostly from men. And she lived in rural Nicaragua, so a small country in Latin America. And she still got hate mail. I mean, these people that didn't like her, they found her address somehow, and they sent her hate mail in Nicaragua. All right, to start the research, what she first did was she ran an ad in the paper. And basically the ad in the paper, it asked people, hey, have you been abducted by aliens? Okay. She said the very first night she received 127 messages on her voicemail. She said some of those messages were angry calls. Like people were like, doesn't Harvard have anything better to do than study alien researches, than study alien abduction? Some people were just joking on the phone line. And she said a lot of them were Latin Americans who misunderstood the ad. And they believed that the ad was looking for people that had been abducted by U.S. immigration. So she tried to explain in her broken English that she was talking about hombres de estrella, which in Spanish means men from the stars. She also said that a few aliens actually called her and left her a message. She said there was a hissing on the line, static, a tonal beeping. They had a cadence to it. And she said this alien called back. I mean, she was half joking. Let's just say that she received some very strange phone calls. I myself have received strange phone calls from what could possibly be non-humans. That's a story for another day. But yeah. Okay, so that's how she started her research. She put this ad out. So the first subject that answered her ad and she started interviewing, she said this person changed her mind on what she thought an alien abductee would be like. She thought they would all be weird people. But actually, she said this guy was very good looking. She said this man was married. He had children. He was successfully employed. And he had skepticism and humor about his alien abduction. He said also the group of people that claimed to have been abducted was very heterogeneous, which means very different. The opposite of heterogeneous is homogeneous, which is all the same. So she said the group were very different. They weren't alike at all. She said some of them were doctors, some of them were MIT grad students, construction workers, single moms, and she said that these people were not more likely than others to experience psychological disorders. So that means they weren't psychologically ill, not more so than any other group of people. And she said they were very nice. So this checks out with me. I've talked to a lot of alien abductees, and yeah, one of them is a construction worker. One of them is a dental student. One of them used to manage restaurants. I mean, they come in all kinds. Now, one of the things she learned from this research, or the main thing she learned, was that most of us, as in most of humanity, were looking for explanations for things that have happened to us, that have caused us psychological distress, or that are strange, anomalous experience. So she said, after the 6 years of research, she said that one of the truths she discovered is that humans were always looking for explanations for things that have caused us harm psychologically and for strange things that have happened to us, which I will agree with that. Yes, I have had strange things that have happened to me, paranormal experiences, and I am looking for answers. Yes. And a lot of people who I talk to who have been abducted or have seen a UFO or seen a Bigfoot, they are also looking for explanations for these strange experiences. Okay. So this is some more things that she learned. She said the first thing that happens, this is how she believes, the people she interviewed, this is how she believes the abduction story comes about, how it starts. She said first, these people, they have symptoms that makes them think. And these symptoms could be like weird memories. They could have like a bunch of physical harm to their body, like a scar, a scoop mark. A scoop mark is like when a part of your flesh is taken. Weird moles on your back, a nightmare, or a weird experience. So the first thing is they have to have weird symptoms. And then after that, they start to ask themselves, could aliens have caused these weird symptoms? So one of the things that they experience a lot, she says, not my words, is sleep paralysis. Okay, so what is sleep paralysis? I suspect some of you know, but some of you don't know. I have had sleep paralysis. And I will say right now, I think she says like most of the paranormal abduction stories she believes are caused by sleep paralysis. So this is a description of what is sleep paralysis. First of all, it is a condition which is non-pathological. Non-pathological means it is not a disease. It's not a disease. It's a desynchrony in sleep cycles. Desynchrony means that things are not lined up correctly. They are out of sync. And so in this case, when you're having sleep paralysis, your sleep cycles are not in sync. In other words, what happens during a sleep paralysis is that your mind will wake up. but your body does not wake up. So normally when you're asleep, your mind is not awake and your body is not awake. But when you have a sleep paralysis, your mind becomes awake. However, your body is still asleep. So your body is paralyzed. So when you're having sleep paralysis, you're aware that you cannot move. So you realize that you're unable to move. She said 50% of people who experience sleep paralysis have a hallucination. And these hallucinations could be like shadows that they see. They could be sounds, or they could feel like they are spinning. They could feel like they're floating above their bed. They can feel electricity around them. She says 30% of the population at some time will experience sleep paralysis. So yeah, I've experienced sleep paralysis as well. It was pretty shocking and scary the first couple of times. I did think I was maybe not able to breathe, but now it happens rarely to me. But if it does, I just kind of know what it is and I just let myself go back to sleep. She says that when people experience sleep paralysis, it can last about 30 seconds to a minute. And what causes sleep paralysis? Well, it could be stress. And this is where I have a little note. So I wonder if, I've always seen a connection between very stressed out people and paranormal experiences. For instance, Betty and Barney Hill, one of the most famous, some people would say it's the first well-known alien abduction. It happened right after their honeymoon. And I suspect they were having a lot of stress because at the time when they were abducted, there was a lot of racism in the country and they were a mixed race couple. So perhaps they were experiencing a lot of stress just by being married. And another person who had an abduction experience was Damien, which Damien is from Black Lotus Productions. He experienced his abduction when he was homeless. That's a very stressful time. So I don't know. There seems to be this connection between stressful times and paranormal things. There's also this connection between stress and having sleep paralysis. Okay. So other symptoms that can cause sleep paralysis are depression. And she also points out that a lot of people, the base rate of depression is very high. And she points out that perhaps a lot of people don't know this little psychological fact. In other words, most of us are very depressed. Depression is very common, and perhaps we don't realize that. And depression can cause sleep paralysis, also anxiety, if you're having sexual problems. Another thing that may lead people to think that they're being abducted is that a lot of people who are abducted, she says, this researcher says, that they often say comments like that they've always felt different than other people. And then, other things like I mentioned that could cause you to think you're being abducted is you have like weird moles on your back or like scoop marks or something. Let me take a break. Here we have a comment. All right. There's Nina Williams. Hi, Nina. Thank you so much for being here. I've seen Nina's name around as well. She's been watching us for a while. Thank you, Nina, for being here. And she says hi to Mr. Catfish. So we have a little reunion party here. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. Okay. So going back to her presentation, she says that basically people experience weird things like sleep paralysis, like weird medical things, like nightmares, or like, the memories or weird experiences, maybe like seeing a UFO. Now, she believes that when this happens, that people look for explanations. They start looking for what could be causing these weird things, like alien abductions. Now, she says that we have been exposed to alien abductions in books, TVs, movies, and the radio since the 1950s. She also says that not a lot of people know about the high base rate of depression, and not a lot of people know about the phenomenon of sleep paralysis. In other words, they don't know about the scientific explanations for their symptoms. These are her words, not mine. Okay, she says that there was a show called Outer Limits in the 1960s, and she says that in that show the aliens look a lot like the Greys. She said that in that show, which was very popular, there were abductions, there was hybridization, there were needles, basically all the things that people report in modern UFO abduction cases was very popular in this show in the 60s. She says that going forward to the 80s, that Whitley Strieber, of course, he wrote his book Communion, which made abduction very popular. I know there was also Fire in the Sky. It's a film. And she said in the 90s, there was the X-Files. I grew up in the 90s. Yeah, X-Files was really big. I was a little kid. I was scared about being abducted. Alien imagery was all over the place. And she talks about, popular media. So what she's basically saying is that since the 1950s, the culture, at least American culture, has been highly exposed to this idea of alien abduction. Other people have argued this as well, like Dr. Carl Sagan argued that Betty and Barney Hill, before they were abducted, they saw this show or a movie that had alien abduction in it and UFOs and aliens, and that's what influenced them. Now, I have to disagree with this researcher because, there are people in the rural Amazon that have been experiencing abductions and weird alien things. There's rural farmers in France, in Kentucky, in Argentina, who have been seeing aliens, been abducted. There's children in Zimbabwe who saw a UFO and an alien. I'm saying that these places are kind of far out there. I don't know if, and some of them happened a while ago. And then people have been reporting weird abductions for as long as people have been writing stories. So I don't know if that's a strong argument from her that popular media is influencing these abductions, because I said some people report these abductions and they live in the most rural areas. And some of these have physical evidence, like landed marks. So I don't know. I don't think that's a very strong argument for all cases. Okay. So she said it's very abnormal. This is her words again. She says it's very abnormal for people to have weird and vivid, powerful, emotionally distressing memories. And she said about 10% of the people who called her on this line had 10% of these people had these emotionally powerful, vivid, distressing memories. But here's something that she points out right here, which is another thing I will argue with her. She said all of them had a regression technique. Okay. So she's saying that basically that she doesn't think that alien abduction is real because everybody she studied who said they had been abducted by aliens had a regression technique, like hypnotic regression. She even says in her presentation, she says, have I ever heard of someone who said, hey, I was just abducted. I got freaked out and I called the police right afterwards, right after it happened. She says, no, I've never heard that. And that's what I would like to hear. Well, I have heard that. That has happened. Not all abduction cases are based on regression memory. So one of the most famous abduction cases is the 1973 Pascagoula, Mississippi abduction by Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson. This happened exactly like she says it's never happened. Basically, these two gentlemen were abducted by aliens. They were fishing. They weren't asleep. They both remembered it. They were taken aboard a craft and examined. They were brought back. They were very scared. They argued about whether they should go to the police. They ended up deciding to go to the police that same night. The police didn't really believe them. They were very scared. And the police decided to do a little experiment, like, hey, let's put them in a room by themselves. Let's put a little tape recorder and secretly record what they're saying. because then we could see what they're really thinking when they think they're alone, because they'll probably be like, oh, you know, we're really fooling them, or we're really tricking them. But actually, they were scared at the recording. They were just talking about how they were really abducted. So this right here, this is another problem I have with this researcher. She's basing all of her statements, all of her beliefs that alien abduction is not real. She bases them all on people who have to use regression techniques like hypnotic regression to get the memories of abduction. But I know a lot of people that don't have to have regression techniques to remember their abduction, like the Travis Parker abduction. So I'm going to go ahead and read a little more details about, we go a little side tangent about this Pascagoula abduction, because it's very fascinating, and I got some media to share about it. Okay, so what I'm going to read is off the Amazon page. So Philip Mantle and Calvin Parker. Calvin Parker was the abductee. They wrote a book, called two books actually, but this first book was called Pascagoula, The Closest Encounter by Story. There's a link to the Amazon page for that book. Let me read what the book says about the experience. So there's some more details. So these are not my words. Please buy the book and support Mr. Calvin Parker. It is one of the strongest abduction cases out there. Okay, so here's what the book says. On October 11th, 1973, 19-year-old Calvin Parker and his friend, 42-year-old Charles Hickson, were spending a frustrating evening fishing on the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. Both men loved to fish, and I know Calvin Parker. I follow him on Facebook. He still loves to fish. But tonight's fishing trip would turn out to be one they would never forget. In the early evening, the men were startled when a strange craft descended and hovered a few feet above the ground and just a few yards from their location. Before they had any chance to run, an opening appeared in the craft, and out floated three humanoid creatures. They were absolutely terrified when these creatures grabbed them and took them aboard the craft. On the craft, both men were subjected to an examination, and at one point, they were so terrified that they believed they were about to die. Minutes later, both Calvin and Charles Hickson were deposited back on the riverbank, and the craft departed. Taking off in their car, the two terrified witnesses eventually located a public telephone box and phoned the local sheriff. A short time later, they were being interviewed at their local sheriff's office. These two disoriented witnesses told their story of their close encounter and abduction by these strange creatures. The next day, all hell was let loose as the press descended on the unsuspecting Mississippi town. And then it says the book features for the first time, the full transcript of Calvin Parker's hypnotic regression session with the late Bud Hopkins, one of the world's foremost researchers of this phenomenon. So it does seem like Calvin Parker was hypnotically regressed, but that happened after he reported the abduction. So him and Charles had a lot of memories about the abduction right after it happened without any hypnotic regression. Now we have a little treat. So I was playing this video game called Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 on my Xbox Series X. And I actually, this game lets you fly a plane over anywhere in the world. So I actually flew my plane. I went online and I typed in Pascagoula Abduction GPS coordinates, basically the latitude and longitude. And there was a website that had latitude and longitudes for apparently where this abduction happened. I don't know how accurate they are. I mean, it is on a river. It is in Pascagoula. And I have a link to the website that has that GPS coordinates. So I have some images. I'm going to share some screenshots I took. So this is what it looks like today. So we're going to look at some screenshots of me flying a video game plane over the area where they were abducted. So let's see if it gives us, we can see what it looked like. Now, of course, this happened back in the 70s. This happened in 1973. This video game uses satellite information to make these pictures. So they're more recent than they are from the 70s. But let's take a look and see what we got here. All right. So what we have here is approaching the site of the abduction. Okay, so what you see is up ahead, we're right on the coast in Pascagoula. And if you look ahead where the little blue lines are in the horizon, we are going to go closer to the area where they were abducted. All right, so let's go a little closer. Okay, so we're getting a little closer. You see that it is, there's like a little islands close to this area. I think they were fishing near a shipping yard where they were working. They were working in a shipyard. So once again, if you see that little blue arrow, we're getting closer to the area where they were supposedly abducted. We're going to continue moving closer. All right, so then once again, we see the little blue arrow is pointing to where they were abducted. So you see the shipyard is right there, kind of an industrial area. All right. And then once again, you see the blue little pin sticking out of the ground. That is where they were fishing when they were abducted. So you see it's on the river. It's right by the coast. And let's see, I think we have some more photographs. All right, there it is. So you see the little pin that's sticking out of the ground. That is where they were fishing when they were abducted. But of course, that area probably looked different, 50 years ago. Here it is again, but I think this is from a different angle now, approaching. But that is the river. Once again, there's a little pin right there. That is the little area where they were abducted. And yep, just getting closer there. And this is from the opposite angle, I think. Coming in from, this is now from the ocean coming in. So anyway, a little bonus there. That's what it looked like where they were abducted. So, I mean, it's interesting. They were abducted by the ocean. There seems to be a connection with the paranormal things and the ocean. Could it be because some of these UFOs are also actually USOs, unidentified submerged objects? Are they coming from the ocean a lot of times? And so a lot of times when you're near water, you're being abducted because you're so close to the water. It could be. Anyway, going back to her presentation. Okay, so Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson, they remembered their abduction the same day without any regression therapy. However, it seems like Bud Hopkins, a famous researcher who has since passed away, did perform regression therapy on Calvin Parker. Now, this researcher, Harvard researcher who wrote this book, she calls regression a pseudotherapy. In other words, a false therapy. Now, I've had my suspicions. I've had my doubts about regression therapy, honestly. I don't know if it's a really a good way to get memories. But she's saying that she doesn't think it's a good way to get memories. And I kind of want to agree with her. Okay, now this is what she says. She says that there's been 3 decades of research, and that during that time, any technique like hypnosis that lulls people to a relaxed state, when that technique is applied, the normal reality constraints are relaxed. What does that mean? It means you run the risk of creating false memories because you're more prone, or you're more likely to confuse things that you imagined, like in a dream or a daydream, with things that actually happened. And that is what happens when you're being regressed. When you're hypnotically regressed, you are relaxed. And she says that what happens is your normal reality constraints are relaxed. Now, this all sounds pretty believable to me. So she calls this this phenomenon of you confusing things you imagined with things that actually happened. She calls this a source monitoring problem. That's just a technical term. Okay, so the researcher I was talking about earlier, his name was Dr. John Mack. And she attacks Dr. John Mack in her presentation directly. She says, I don't know if this is true, I haven't listened to his recordings, but she says that what he does during these regression sessions is that she leads the subjects on. In other words, Dr. John Mack, what he would do, he's also passed away since then, But he says that he would lead people on. So this is confirmable. We could listen to it if we wanted to. We could also look at Bud Hopkins and see if he actually leads people on. But he said that he would ask questions like, do you remember what happened? Oh, you don't remember what happened. Well, was there a shadow in the room? Okay, was the shadow holding anything? Maybe it had a needle, etc. So those are kind of leading questions. She accuses Dr. John Mack of doing this. I don't know if that's true. She also says that this happened during the Betty and Barney Hill regression tapes. I don't know for sure if it happened, but it is. I mean, those tapes are out there. We can listen to them and we can see if that's true or not. But in her opinion, they were being led, and so they're not good regression techniques. However, she does not poo-poo or completely say hypnosis is bad. She says hypnosis is good for quitting smoking, for quitting drinking, and for reducing pain, but she says it's a bad way to get back memories. She says, so people are experiencing sleep paralysis, weird medical things. Of all the explanations, she says, why would people choose the alien abduction explanation? She says there's benefits. These are her words. She said there's benefits to saying alien abduction because she says, well, if you say you're being abducted by aliens, this could be an explanation for why you've never had a healthy relationship. It could be why you keep waking up in the middle of the night with nightmares. It could be an explanation for your psychological distress. And she also said that in 5 years, when she asked all her interviewees, no one said the statement, no one said, I wish I wasn't abducted. She said all of them said it was awful, it was terrible, it was painful, but I wouldn't change anything. I'm glad it happened to me. I will say I've heard both. I've heard people that have been abducted who don't like it. They're afraid of it happening, and they wish it never happened. I've also heard people that have said that, that they want it to happen. They're glad it happened, even though it was traumatic. So I guess I will push back on her. Maybe all the people she talked to in 5 years said that, but I've talked to people. My hair keeps freaking out. Okay. But I've talked to people and I've heard both. I've heard people that are like, man, I want to stop being abducted. I don't like it. But she said she never heard anybody say, I wish I wasn't abducted. So I got to push back on that. Okay, these are quotes that she's heard people say to her. She's heard people say, I feel blessed. It broadened my perspective about what reality encompasses. It taught me that we are not alone, so my priorities in life have changed. I'm not so hung up on earthly things. I care more about the spiritual path and about mankind. She said that there was a 60-year-old woman who she interviewed, and that woman said, these beings are like God's angels, in a very roundabout way, like messengers. They're here to expand our reality, and out of my aloneness, I have discovered a oneness with the universe. So these are all statements that people have quoted to her, saying that, they feel like they've grown from the abduction experience. I will say, I can see how if I was abducted and there was strong evidence that I was abducted, and let's say I was actually abducted by aliens, I can see how these statements would apply to me. I mean, I think these are statements that would apply legitimately to someone who was abducted. At the same time, I guess they could also be applied to someone who believes they were abducted, but weren't actually abducted. She says that being abducted is a transformative experience. It gives you meaning for your entire life. There's something bigger than you are, and you've been chosen. Okay? She says that many of us are looking for answers and meaning, trying out different belief systems. Belief systems are like Christianity, Buddhism, and alien abduction. She says that these belief systems are here to fill an emotional need. We want to feel less alone, or like we have special abilities. We want to believe that there's something more important watching over us. it causes us to suspend our disbelief. She said she started studying abductions because she picked abductions to see what was the mechanism to why people embrace pseudoscience. So once again, I talked about what science is the other day, and I talked about what this term pseudoscience mean. Whenever you see pseudo, it means false. It means fake. So she says that she believes that alien abductions and the study of them are a fake science. And once again, to have for something to be real science, you have to have repeatability. So you have to be able to repeat your results, and you have to have falsifiability. You have to be able to prove if something is wrong. Man, it would take me a while to sit down and analyze whether the study of alien abductions is a pseudoscience. Can you study alien abductions and keep your repeatability and you keep falsifiability? I think yes, you could, but it's very difficult, and I'd have to sit down and plan it out. Anyway, some other points she says that are very interesting. She says that another cause of alien abductions could be a temporal lobe epilepsy. Temporal lobe epilepsy. So your temporal lobe is a section of your brain. So she says that there may be an area in your brain that when it's triggered, it imbues the person with a sense of profound religiosity or intense sexual experiences. So basically, she's saying it could be that some people have a medical condition that affects their brain, their temporal lobe, and this causes them to have these religious experiences, which a lot of abduction experiences could be considered as a religious, but they could also make you have intense sexual experiences, like a lot of pleasure. So one of the takeaways I'm getting from this is, once again, I would never tell anybody who tells me they're being abducted by aliens, I would never tell them that they're not being abducted by aliens. I would never say, hey, you're just having sleep paralysis. But what I'm learning is I would suggest they have a physical, and they check themselves for any underlying medical problems like epilepsy or like depression or anxiety or sleep paralysis or sleep apnea or sleep disorders. I would just do that to rule out that first. I mean, that's one of the easiest things you could do if you're suffering from alien abductions. I would just go to the doctor and I would try to see if I don't have any of these serious medical problems. I understand that medical care, especially in America, there's a very hard barrier of entry. It's very expensive to get quality health care. And even if you get health care, a lot of doctors are shit, basically. But if anybody's watching this, man, if you don't have sufficient medical care and you need medical care, you could contact me. I will help you find affordable medical care. There's community, there's a nonprofit organizations, nonprofit hospitals that will help you qualify for medical care. So that to me is very important. I really think everybody should go get a physical. If you're suffering from any pain, you shouldn't be in pain. You shouldn't have mental pain. You shouldn't have physical pain in your body. You shouldn't have it constantly. You shouldn't have problems sleeping, okay? So if you're suffering from these problems, I really encourage you to seek some medical care. And if you don't have enough money, if you don't have enough time, I encourage you to look for nonprofit organizations, nonprofit hospitals that can help you find medical care. And if you need help even with that, leave a comment. I will help you wherever you are. Find medical care. I think medical care is very important. You should enjoy your life. You should not have pain, medical or physical. Okay, she also points out that sleep paralysis can happen even when you're not sleeping. So if you're driving and you're just sleep deprived, you could have a 30-second sleep paralysis. Or if you're just really tired, you're on the couch, you could have sleep paralysis. So you don't have to be sleeping in your bed to have sleep paralysis. Oh yeah, here's the point where she said, this is what she says, which I have to disagree with her. She says she never had somebody who had an abduction experience and right afterwards they called the police. But that did happen in not the Travis Walton. That did happen in the Calvin Parker Pascagoula abduction case. It did happen. She says that if people have more education about sleep paralysis, it could help them. Not go to alien abductions, because she believes that sleep paralysis has been around for a long time, and people have said that the sleep paralysis is actually in the past. They have mistaken sleep paralysis for an old hag, like a gargoyle sleeping on your chest, witches, or religious visitations, which I think is true. I do think some people have sleep paralysis and they don't know what it is, and they do get scared, and they do think it is something weird. So she believes that if people experience sleep paralysis and they receive an explanation for what sleep paralysis is before they think it's an alien abduction, it could change their mind and it could make them believe it's not alien abduction. But she says, once someone believes they've been abducted by aliens, in her experience, it is very hard to change their mind afterwards. Once you've set it in your mind that you've been abducted by alien abductions, that you've been abducted by aliens, people are very resistant to changing their mind. I think I have seen that as well. She says she doesn't provide an alternate explanation anymore. So when people talk to her and they thought they were abducted by aliens, she never tried to change their mind afterwards, because they would get angry and they would just not talk to her anymore. Like I said, I would never try to change anybody's mind about being abducted by aliens. But basically, the main takeaways from these talks are that she's basing her idea that alien abduction is just caused by regression memories, by regression memory therapy, is caused by traumatic memories, by the media, by the need for explanations. I think it's flawed. Her explanation is flawed, and it doesn't cover all abductions, because a lot of people don't have regression therapy. She's basing this all on regression therapy. All of her subjects have regression therapy, but there are several people who have been abducted by aliens, have experiences with aliens, and they never had abduction. They never had regression therapy. Let's see. We have a little comment here. Iowax, have you seen an alien? Hey, Iowax, thank you for being here. I appreciate you from last time. I have seen aliens, but I don't know if it was a dream or not. I talked about it early on. I'll tell you real fast again. One time I was 19. I was laying on a couch. I woke up. I looked to my side, and I saw 3 gray aliens. They looked very cute, adorable even, like little children. They were short, big eyes, gray skin, no features, skinny bodies, like a little gray suit. They moved very delicately like children. When they saw that I was awake, they ran down the hallway, and I went back to sleep. I don't know if that was a dream or not. But man, if all aliens look that cute, bring them on. I love them. They were adorable. I don't know if that was a dream or not. But please tell me, Iowax, if you've seen an alien. And I will say, Iowax, if you check out his channel, he plays some music. He writes some poetry. I like his music, and I like his poetry. Thank you for being here, Iowax. Okay, so that's the main problem with her research. She bases it all on regression therapy, and not all alien abduction cases are based on regression therapy. They're not all based on hypnosis. So I think people are being abducted by weird things, honestly. What else was I going to say? She said, okay, she addresses her bias. Somebody after the presentation asked her, like, hey, isn't it weird that you think that that you already thought that alien abduction wasn't real before you started the experiment? Don't you have a bias? Isn't that wrong? Well, first of all, she says, this is what her explanation is. She says she doesn't believe in alien abduction. Why? She says because it's all anecdotal evidence. It's also suspicion rumor, or hearsay. In other words, hearsay means information received from other people that one cannot adequately substantiate, or rumors. She says there's no objective evidence, no experimental data, no photos, and no physical evidence. Okay, so that's why. But yeah, I have a couple things to say about that. Just because there's no physical evidence for something, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. So, I don't know. Here's just a silly example. I could be walking down the street and I could see my cousin and he could come up and slap me in the face. And then I could tell everybody, hey, my cousin slapped me in the face. And I don't have any physical evidence to prove it. I don't have any photographs. I don't have anything at all. Just my story, just rumors and hearsay. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. I did get slapped in the face in this example by my cousin. And so it could be that we don't have the tools right now or the techniques to have evidence. So that's not a good enough explanation for me. Just because we don't have evidence of alien abduction doesn't mean it doesn't happen. The other thing is we do have some physical evidence. It's rare, but there is physical evidence. The Betty and Barney Hill case, there was physical evidence. Barney's shoes were all scuffed up because apparently he was being dragged by the alien. That shoe is a physical piece of evidence. Betty's dress was torn and stained. The car had holes punched in it, and it had magnetic fields in it. That's physical evidence. In the Calvin Parker case in Pascagoula, the police had a physical tape where they recorded them talking when they thought they were alone. That physical tape is physical evidence. Some abduction cases, they also have landing marks. So like holes in the ground where an alien ship would have landed. That's physical evidence. I will give it to her. It's very rare. And it's very hard to have physical evidence for alien abductions. But it is there. Here we go. Iowok says, thank you. You're welcome, Iowok. I mean it. Okay. So when she addresses her bias, once again, so that's her explanation. That's like, she's like, okay, I have a bias. Why do I have the bias? Why do I think that there's no way alien abductions could be real? This is why. She gives that explanation, because there's no physical evidence. She says that she asked her about her bias. She says, look, we all have a bias. Every researcher has a bias going into a research project, which is true. I mean, it's impossible for me to start an experiment without some ideas in my head. But I still try to keep an open mind. I try to put a back burner on them and entertain both sides of the story. So if I was studying alien abduction and started an experiment, I think some of it's real, but I would put that thought in the back burner and I would still try to imagine that it isn't real and that it is real. But she specifically says she started the experiment with 100% sure that it wasn't real. Now, she also says that she believes that the scientific techniques, because the techniques are in the experiment, when you're doing a study, those techniques, because they're standardized, it helps you weed out your own biases. So basically, she's saying the tools and the techniques of the scientific method, if they're done correctly, they will help you weed out your biases. They are a measure to help you against your bias. I see where she's coming from, but I still think if you have a strong bias, it could subconsciously influence your techniques and your results. So I think you shouldn't go into it. But hey, she admits it. I guess at least she's admitting she has a bias. She also believes that a question that should be asked is why people need to seek meaning and some don't. So basically, she thinks that after all this research she did on alien abduction, she thinks an interesting question is, why do some people have odd experiences, religious experiences, paranormal experiences? Why do some people have these weird experiences? And some of them are like, oh, okay, whatever, no big deal, and they go about their lives. And then she says, and then why do some people have these weird experiences and they have to find a meaning behind them? And she also noticed that her subjects had experiences that were disturbing to them, and they were trying to understand them. So she basically believes that a lot of people who had the way all these abduction stories started, basically the way they started is somebody had, this is what she believes, they had a disturbing experience, and then they were trying to understand them better. And then the last thing that happens is they had regression therapy, and the regression therapy gave them the explanation for what was going on. And yeah, that's basically her presentation. The other thing is that I thought was interesting is that it's kind of sad, but she stopped doing all abduction research. She did this research for 5 years. She wrote her book. She gave her presentations, but she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. She's not engaging in alien abduction research anymore. That's kind of a shame. She says the reason why is because she received so much pushback. Part of me suspects that she herself is afraid of the answers, because like I said, I pushed back on her, and the people in her presentation pushed back on her. You know, her central belief that all alien abduction stories are caused by hypnotic regression is not real. She states things that are not true. I believe perhaps she doesn't want to dig deeper. She's afraid of what she might find. That is just my thoughts. It's not, she doesn't say that, but it is very interesting to me that she completely left the subject. And she received a lot of pushback. I've already received a little bit of pushback in the comments when I was advertising this presentation, but like I said, I am just trying to understand the other side of the argument. I do believe some alien abductions do occur. But with that being said, I mean, if you yourself believe you've been abducted by aliens, I suspect that perhaps you're suffering, and I am very sorry to hear that. Perhaps you're not suffering. But if you want to discuss it with me, you can always send me a message, and I will gladly talk about that subject with you. I will not judge you. And I will try to help you find some relief. But I think that about sums up this presentation. Once again, I hope you guys learned something. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Mr. Catfish, Nina, Iowax, and everybody watching this presentation later, thank you for being here. I will put annotations so you can kind of skip through everything later. But yeah, I hope you have a great week. I will be back on Sunday at the same time, 8 p.m. Central, I will be interviewing someone who will be talking about Texas UFOs. So thanks a lot, and have a great night. I sure appreciate it. Goodbye, everybody.